Hey everybody, I'm Scott Weichel. You're listening to My Kind of Country on MKOCRadio.com. Fans of country music history are going to want to really listen closely to this one tonight. It's an honor and a privilege for me to interview this gentleman. He is a member of the Rockabilly Hall of Fame, and he is the last surviving member of Hank Williams' Drifting Cowboy Band, and he's also played with such greats as Lefty Frizzell and Little Jimmy Dickens, and he's had some great recordings on his own, some famous rockabilly recordings, and quite a history, and he's here to talk with us tonight along with his wife Frankie. It's my honor to welcome Joe Penny to My Kind of Country. Hello, Joe.
Hey there.
It's a pleasure to have you on the show tonight. Thank you for taking the time.
Well, I'm not much of a talker, but I'm glad you got me on, and it's a pleasure to have you on with me.
Well, I appreciate you taking the time. You've got a great history, and I'm going to ask you some questions about your musical history, and we're going to also play some of your great music from our listeners tonight. How's that?
Oh, that'd be fine.
And right away, I want to thank my good friend Mario Carboni. I understand he came to visit you recently, and he's responsible for getting us in touch, and I want to thank him on the air for that tonight. That means a lot to me.
That's the fellow that came about a week ago. He's quite a boy. He's quite a musician.
He certainly is. He's a heck of a piano player, isn't he?
He's really good.
He sure is. I have a lot of respect for him, and we play his music all the time on our show. So I tip my hat to Mario. He's great. Well, Joe, I'd like to ask you about your early years, and I understand you were about 16 or 17 when you had your first band called Sons of the South. Can you tell me a little bit about your early career?
Well, that doesn't seem like it's going to be much because that was so long ago I can't hardly remember it.
His sister was in that band with him too.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Once in a while. She wasn't always there, but that was the time back then when I couldn't hardly remember anymore.
That was the first band he played in.
Wow. Well, it sounds like you came from a musical family, and I understand your mother was a music lover, and she taught you how to play the major chords on the guitar.
Yeah, that was good old Mom. She was always there when I needed her.
That's wonderful. And then in 1946, you were performing with a swing band down in Texas called Dub Adams and the K-Bar Ranch Hands.
Yeah.
Yes.
That
was a long time ago.
Well, that's back when music was good, you know. That's why we still play it today, because that's good music, you know.
It is. It's really good.
What was the thing that I was going to ask you was, what do you do besides the radio stuff?
Well, I this is a full-time job for me now. I've been in music all my life. I had a band for about 25 years, and we played all over the Midwest. And I worked for a national music chain for many years. And music's always been a part of my life. And then I started doing the radio show, and I've been doing this for about 5 years now, and I really enjoy it. And this is my favorite part when I get to talk to people like you who have that history, you know.
I don't think that's in the write-ups, but Joe was in radio all of his life. That was always his job. He was in radio during the week and played music at weekends.
Well, you're a DJ too, then, so I'm in good company tonight.
Definitely a DJ.
Well, that's great. Well, I'd like to ask you about when you first met Hank Williams. I understand that Clyde Criswell, I think they called him Chris, got you a job playing guitar for Hank.
Yeah, he was quite a picker, and I always looked to him to be the reason that I went up to Montgomery, Alabama, and got with Hank.
Mm-hmm.
'Cause I didn't know much about Hank when I first met Chris, but he came back and said he couldn't let his wife to go up there, so he had to quit and come back to our side.
Chris was married, and his wife did not want to move to Alabama.
Oh, okay.
So he wanted to move to Alabama to work with Hank, and he did work with him for a while, and his wife wouldn't go. So he came back home to Tampa, Florida, and Joe lives in Plant City. And he told Joe that he said, I can get you a job with Hank. And of course, Joe didn't know who Hank was. He was an unknown then anyway. And he told him, he said, Chris told him that he would get him a job with Hank if he wanted to go to Alabama. So Joe hitchhiked to Alabama to talk to Hank on the phone, and he told him to come on up. He hitchhiked to Alabama and got the job and worked for him in 1947 and 48. He had the guys in the band rented rooms from Hank's mother had a rooming house, a boarding house, and they shared rooms together. The band did.
It was about a week down the road from the radio station.
Yeah, and the radio station was one block down, and so they lived there at the boarding house in Montgomery, and then and they recorded at the radio station, was on the radio every day or something, and they was only one block away, so they would go down to the radio station and record every day with Hank.
Wow. So was that the first time that you played with Hank, was on the radio then?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. That's really neat. And then you were with Lum York, who played bass, and Red Todd, the rhythm guitar player, and the steel guitar player, R.D. Norrid. That was the group back then. Yeah. And then the radio station was WSFA, and that was a fantastic show back then. Now, this was before Hank had signed to MGM, and he was doing some recordings for the Sterling label at that time. Is that right?
He only had one song out, and Joe didn't even know who he was. He heard it on the radio, and he didn't even know it was the same guy.
Is that right? Wow.
Meeting.
So, Joe, how was Hank to work with? Was he a pretty nice guy?
Yeah, he was all right. But, I guess you and whoever might be listening, it was a time when I worked with him. We only played $6 a night for wherever we went and played. It was only $6 a piece.
They got paid $6 a night.
Wow.
At a big paycheck, huh?
Yeah.
Really, that was really a stand for everybody that played in the area. That was really what it cost. But I had that seemed like a little bit of a stand for mother did most of the playing for the band. Most jobs were only on Friday or Saturday.
Mm-hmm.
His mother booked him just about everything there was to see, and so we would play 4 or 5 nights a week for everything that we did.
So you were playing just about anywhere you could when Hank wasn't working, huh?
Mm-hmm.
So, and I understand that Hank gave you your stage name of he called you Little Joe Pennington, and then later you changed it to Joe Penny. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty great. You know, Hank was obviously known for having a problem with alcohol. Did you ever witness any of that when you worked with him?
I never saw him take a drink.
Is that right? Wow.
And we went, worked or played. He was all right. Never saw him take a drink.
He never drank all the whole time that Joe played with him until right toward the end of the time that he was there. And they had a big show someplace. It was in Montgomery. They had a big show in Montgomery, and they had
Alabama.
In Alabama, and they had some guest singers from another group come over, and then they had, and Hank had to. They was playing a show that night, and Hank left the show to go over to this other place to make a showing over there where can you think of who the singers was? Where there was a couple of other singers doing another show, and so Hank's band just kept on playing. Joe kept on singing, and he went over there to them, and he was supposed to go and make a showing and maybe sing a song or two, and then come back. He did not come back. So his band went ahead and played the whole rest of the night, and then they were supposed to play the next night too, and they come the next night to play. Joe and the band did, Hank's band, and Hank still never showed up. So finally he came in later on in the evening, up after they had already been playing for a while, and he had on the same clothes and everything that he had on when he left the night before. He went over there with this other band and got involved with women and drinking. And he had not been drinking at all that whole time that Joe played with him, parts of 2 years. And he got involved with that, and that started messing up everything. He ended up that they had to put him in some kind of a place to get him off of the alcohol. Of course, he lost his job where he was been playing for a while. And the guy told Hank that he didn't want him back. He gave the job to Hank's band. Anyway, that's about the time there, whenever everything started breaking up, the guys started going with other people, playing with other people.
Mm-hmm.
Because Hank wasn't available to do this no more right now for a while.
Joe, did you ever do any songwriting, or were you around Hank when he did any songwriting?
No, I was before my time. When I was with Hank, it was just playing, and we would do a couple of numbers on the radio. He would have me and his wife, Audrey. But anyway, the three of us would play old songs, old numbers that would sing just for the number on
Hmm. So he really didn't have a lot of original material at that time. He was mostly just doing cover songs.
Well, we always had original stuff. He had a lot of songs that was new at the time, but he would have them. He got 2 or 3 more songs, but when he'd go to Nashville, and they would record them then, but we wouldn't take the band to Nashville anymore. The boss, what was the boss's name?
Fred Rose. Fred Rose.
Fred Rose was pretty much his manager at that time.
They was recording some songs, and they was going to have this band to back him up on this record. And one of the guys in the band, I won't mention his name, but he kept messing up. And whenever you go in their studio and record, you're paying by the minute,
Oh yeah.
by the hour or whatever. Mm-hmm. And he kept messing up, and he kept causing problems. And so they never did get it recorded with the original band. And then Fred Rose told Hank next time he come back to come by himself and do a recording, and that they would let the Nashville band back him up because they didn't make mistakes and they knew what they was doing, and they done everything properly and right and got it done now and quick. They didn't mess around. And that the guy that kept messing up, they refused to let him be on any of the records.
Oh, I see.
Because he kept messing up. So Joe did not get to be on an actual record playing because of the other guy.
So you were playing, traveling around with the governor of Alabama for a while too. Is that right?
With a whole year, months. We did the whole state for 1 month, and I went with his band was working with him at that time, and the boy that I worked with him. So we joined up with them and went over the whole state of Alabama too.
When he played with Hank, he did not get out of Alabama at all. Mm-hmm. And they stayed mostly around Montgomery, mostly all right there. And then so now he's traveling as governor. He's all over the state.
Wow.
And you asked about being in the Navy. There's one thing I want to say about that. When he was in the Navy, guess what he done? Played music.
I was going to say, he probably played music. Of course.
That's what he done in the Navy, played music.
Joe, what kind of a guitar were you playing back in those days?
When we went to guitar instead of the drum, I had my old guitar that I played through when I was with Hank. It was a Gibson electric.
Oh, yeah. That was a preferred instrument back in those days. A lot of great sounds came out of those Gibsons, that's for sure. Did you stay playing Gibsons throughout your career?
Pretty much.
Good man. Nothing wrong with that. So after you got out of the Navy, you were down in Texas, and you met up with Lefty Frizzell.
Yeah. When I worked a little while with Lefty, he wasn't even doing records at that time. And he wore a hat then.
Did he really? Wow. I don't think I ever saw him. Well, maybe a couple times saw him wearing a hat. Not often, though.
I had had a picture with him and two of the guys, and he was wearing a hat on that picture. Somebody got him a chance to record. He went and he come back to Big Spring, Texas, out there when he come back, he was trying to get himself organized, and he went. When he come back, he got with the old band that he had there, and I stayed there in Big Spring with the band. When he went and got a chance to record, he went and traveled around with the band, but he didn't go over very well at first. So he came back with the band, and I went down the road to another place, and I went back with this band down the road a little ways, and at that time they didn't think much of Lefty's style or whatever it was.
Yeah.
But when this guy got him acquainted with Lefty's style, and they cut a record, and when they went and cut recording, he got both sides of the record. There's 1 and 2 back and forth to get his start, because they got him going on this one record, and they went right on to the top songs.
Well, you also, Joe, you also worked with little Jimmy Dickens for a little while too, right?
Yeah, I was still working in Memphis, and he came in with a show, and they heard me playing backstage, and I played pretty good by then. It was, let's see, it was something like a year or so after I was with Hank and Lefty.
Mm-hmm.
But some of the boys said, "That boy's pretty good for you. He'll go on this trip with you." So we got to play it backstage, and Jimmy heard me playing, and he said, "Yeah, we need." He had his two guitar players, usually already working with him, and but didn't want to play on a long trip like he'd planned. So they went ahead and hired me to go with them to play with there was one guitar player, well-known guy that most of them were, but he said if he would hire me to go with him on that trip, I would let this other guy go back to Nashville.
Is that Thomas Carlyle?
Yeah.
Thomas Carlyle.
Thomas Carlyle was the other boy that went with him. And so he hired me to go with him on this trip all the way down through Arkansas and then Texas and New Mexico and right on out to the trip all the way out to the West Coast. Went up and down the West Coast all the way up to Oregon, and then back down and across the back town across the state, and all the way back to Memphis, and that's where he took the rest of the guys on back to Nashville, and I stopped off in Memphis, and that was the end of my trip with Jimmy Dickens.
Wow, you guys covered some ground. And it wasn't, back in those days, you were probably traveling in a car and there was a bunch of you crammed in there with all your instruments, too.
2 cars, and one of them pulled the trailer.
Uh-huh. Whew, man, that's a lot of ground.
That was before the big buses.
Yeah.
It was just traveling in 2 cars.
That's incredible. Well, I wanted to talk a little bit, we mentioned earlier, about your radio career. And you were working for a radio station in 1954, Sunday Jamboree Show on WILD, and that was in Birmingham. And you started working as a disc jockey after that. And then you also, as I read, you did some television work up in Indiana on the Hoosier Jamboree. Is that right?
That's so long ago that I don't hardly remember any of that. But I stayed on the.
One of the TV shows lasted a couple of years, and it was on every Saturday night for about 3 hours on television. And it had a big building where they had the audience, people could come and see it in person, and it was packed every week. And then he also was on a couple of other different TV shows too, with other bands and all that, where he helped them and emceed them and sang and played music with them. He was on about 3 different TV shows in the Indiana, Evansville, Indiana, Henderson, Kentucky area.
Oh, yeah. Yep. Absolutely. I used to live in Terre Haute, so I'm familiar with that. I used to go down to Evansville once in a while, so I know right where that's at.
Well, I was born in Evansville.
Were you really? Oh, wow. Yep. I had a store down there one time. We used to go down there and then to the casino they had there. It was a floating casino. You had to walk out onto this boat. And they
still got all that stuff going.
Yep. I'll be darned. That's pretty neat. Well, Joe, tell me about the song that you wrote for Gene Shepard. Yeah, Don't Fall in Love with a Married Man.
How how did you come up with that song? What made it come up? You remember why you recorded it? I mean, how come you wrote it?
I wrote that song when I was up in North Michigan.
Oh, is that right? Up in my area. That's where I'm from. How did Gene Shepard come to record your song?
I was at that time I'd become acquainted with
Red Fortner in Indiana. He was a promoter, and he was a pretty good promoter, and he took Joe under his wings, and he's the one that got that recorded with Gene. He took the song to her to somebody, and he's the one that took care of it. We didn't do it.
Okay.
Joe didn't do it.
Mm-hmm.
Took the song to the publisher.
Yeah.
And he had several songs, and he played them for them, and they thought, well, that sounds like a good song for Jean to record, to do.
That was either her first or second record.
And you recorded a single on Federal in 1958 called Bip a Little, Bop a Lot, and Mercy, Mercy, Percy. Can you tell me about those songs?
Well, I was, at that time, I was trying to get away from the country songs pretty much. That's why it was going. And so we went with that song, and I guess we went to not to Nashville, but to Cincinnati.
They recorded at Cincinnati, Ohio.
And I had my own band there, and
Joe's playing guitar, and it's his own band.
when we came back, we didn't know that was going to be a very big song, but I don't remember when we came back to Evansville after we cut that song.
That's their song of Bip a Little Bop a Lot. That's the one that put him in the Rockabilly Hall of Fame. He's in 2 Rockabilly Hall of Fames, one in Burns, Tennessee, and one in Black Cat in London, England. And that is the song that put him in the Rockabilly Hall of Fame.
Yeah, that song has been released on a lot of collections. It's a very popular in the rockabilly field, and those, as I said, the original 45s I know are very collectible.
I liked it. I thought it was good, and like I said, was his own band that he played with music with in and around Evansville, Indiana and Kentucky, and he is the one playing the lead guitar on them.
Okay, great. And then you also did a song in 1962 called Frosty Window Pane.
Yeah. That one done really good in the Florida area, I know for sure. And he was on radio at that time with several radio stations, so they played it like crazy. It done real good.
Absolutely. I want to ask Frankie, how did you and Joe meet, and how long have you been married now?
We've been married 57 years. And, we met. A friend of mine from long years ago was a steel guitar player. And he was just a young kid, but he lived over by us in Indiana. And he told us that he was going to be playing at the American Legion in Evansville. And so me and a friend of mine decided we was going to go up there to see him with a full big band, because we heard him play before, but never with a big band. And then the band was Joe's band, but we didn't know it at the time.
Mm-hmm.
But Joe had been on the radio for quite a while, and I listened to him on the radio all the time because I loved country music. And I would call him up or either send him a postcard almost every day and ask him mostly to play Ernest Tubb and Justin Tubb. And and then every time I would send him a postcard, he would put it on the radio. He'd say, "Well, we got another request here for Ernest Tubb again. Frankie wrote us another card wanting us to play a song for him," and he kept calling me a he, because my name was Frankie. He kept calling me a he, and every time he did, I'd have a fit. So whenever we went up there to that there dance that night, so I could see the steel guitar player, he wasn't a boyfriend or nothing, just a friend. And we went in there.
It was about a block away from you.
So went down there, and they had a little break time. So when they had the break, I went up there to the stage, and I said, "I would like to request a song." And Joe was the MC and the star singer that night. So I said, "I would like to request a song." He said, "What would you like to hear?" I said, "I would like to hear Sonny play Steel Guitar Rag," on the steel guitar, of course. And he said, "Okay, we'll get her done." And then Sonny was making all kinds of little jokey jokes. And so I turned around and walked off. I was going back to the table, and I took about 3 steps, and I turned around, and I looked at him, and looked at Joe, and I said, "Oh, by the way, I want to tell you something." He said, "Yes." And I said, "I just want you to know that I am Frankie, and I am not a he." And he said, "Well, I can see that." And I turned around and walked away. And that's the first time I ever met him. And so they had some posters in the wall and then outside and all that. And I took one of those posters, and this is 1955. I took one of them posters, and as a souvenir, they was just little advertisements, and they wasn't no good anyway no more. After the show, they'd be throwing them away anyhow. And you know that he's got a music room outside, and I've got that poster on the wall.
Oh, you still got it. Oh, that's neat.
And it tells you on there who's singing and who's going to be there, and the band and all that kind of stuff. A picture of him, and on the bottom it says that you had to pay 50 cents to get in. And I said, "Well, I cannot believe that I paid 50 cents to get in to meet him." 2 years later, I married him.
It was about 4 or 5, wasn't it?
No, a couple of years later, we got married. And so, anyway, it was... I tell everybody, can you believe that anybody would pay 50 cents to meet somebody? Turn around and marry him? Well, I feel like he owes me 50 cents.
That's right. You owe 50 cents there, Joe. She's the prettiest Frankie you ever met, I bet.
She was a pretty little girl.
What a great story. I love it.
I had about 6 or 8 months time playing on that particular stage. That was a Saturday night thing, but I was working at the time at the station there.
He worked in radio and daytime, played music at night.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Well, it was mostly on the radio at that time, 6 or 8 months or so, and I kept going every day. I had 2 different shows on the radio there, and it got kind of popular.
Well, Joe, I'd like to ask, you recorded a gospel album, and you've got a couple songs that are kind of autobiographical, and one of those is called The Almighty Fix-It Man, and one just called The Growing Old Song. Can you tell me about those?
The Almighty Fix-It Man has just been recorded by the 4th person. Joe recorded it, and then 3 other groups has recorded it. Wow. One of them just recorded it about 2 weeks ago, and they're going to be sending me a copy of it anytime.
Fabulous. That's great.
And the old one is the story of Joe's life. It is all about his mom and dad and him, and it's the story of his whole life. And it's probably 6 or 7 minutes long, but it tells a real good story. And he went to, I can't remember where at right now. I think it was in Georgia, and talked to Jimmy Davis, the singer.
Oh, yeah.
And he took that song to Jimmy Davis, and he sit there and listened to that whole song and told Joe how good it was. But he said, he said, you would have a hard time getting it played because of it being so long. But he said, I want to tell you something. That song should not be recorded by nobody else. It should be recorded by you, because it was your life and your story, and that you should be the one to record it. So Joe went and recorded it himself.
Wow.
And it has got quite a bit of play, and we've had people to call us up and say that they have been on vacation in Carolinas and Georgia and all kinds of places, and they heard that song on the radio.
Oh, that's
great. And he put it on if you know who the Freemans are and the gospel singers.
Yes.
Okay, he recorded 3 songs on different CDs with the Freemans on albums, and the Freemans was on it and other people. And Daryl Freeman told Joe that let's don't put that Growing Old one on the first one. Let's wait and put something else on first. So they put another song on. And then the second time they recorded, they put The Growing Old on. And then I forgot what the third one was, but they put a third one on another album, 3 different albums. And Daryl told him it was pretty long, and he didn't know how it would go. And it surprised Daryl because that song had been heard all over the United States, and different people had called and told us about it. And then a friend of ours from Florida went to Virginia or someplace and heard it on the radio while they was in Virginia.
Wow, that's great.
It got a lot more play than Daryl even expected that it would.
That's wonderful.
Surprised, but he did get to record on a record with the Freemans.
Well, Joe, on behalf of all my listeners and for myself personally, I'd like to thank you for your wonderful stories and your contributions to country music. I consider you a treasure, and you mean a lot to so many people, and I want to thank you so very much for taking the time to talk to me and to be on my show, and you both have been so gracious to me, and I really can't thank you enough. I appreciate it so very much.
Well, it's sure great to have talked to you, and all the time we've taken. I appreciate it very much, and it's good to talk to you about the old days.
Well, Joe, we certainly like to hear about all those old times and all that great music. And speaking of which, we're going to go back and play some of your great songs right now. We're going to play Frosty Window Pane and the original Federal 45, Bip a Little Bop a Lot, and Mercy, Mercy, Percy. We got those coming for you. Also, a Hank Williams tribute song that Joe recorded called Hank's Still Alive and Well. And we're going to play a couple of Joe's gospel songs that we talked about, Growing Old with God and The Almighty Fix-It Man. And then after that, we're going to play some Hank Sr., some Lefty Frizzell, and some little Jimmy Dickens from the golden era of country music as we continue with My Kind of Country right here on MKOCRadio.com.
A heart full of initials on a frosty window pane. I printed our initials on a frosty window pane. I drew a heart around them as we gazed out at the rain. The falling mist has ended, but my heart has not been spared. The window pane holds memories of a happiness we've shared. When the rain returns, the letters reappear. I've tried erasing them just like my tears, but they are there forever, like a love that still remains. A heart full of initials on a frosty window pane. When the rain returns, the letters reappear. I've tried erasing them just like my dear, but they are there forever, like a love that still remains. A heart full of initials on a frosty window pane.
A bip a little bop a lot, baby. Shake a lot of what you got, baby. When the music is so fine, you gotta rock me all the time. Bip a little bop a lot, baby. Let's go out tonight and have some fun, where we can bop a lot and spend a little money. I need to loosen up so I can get with you. Bop a lot, baby, gonna shake my blue. Well, bip a little bop a lot, baby. Shake a lot of what you got, baby. And when the music is so fine, you gotta rock me all the time. Bip a little bop a lot, baby. Shake a lot of what you got, baby. When the music is so fine, you gotta rock me all the time. Bip a little bop a lot, baby. Well, we're gonna fly high and get low down, rocking in the country and shaking it down. You can't take it with you, so use it while you're here. Bop a lot, baby, don't you have no fear. Well, bip a little bop a lot, baby. Shake a lot of what you got, baby. When the music is so fine, you gotta rock me all the time. Bip a little bop a lot, baby. Bip a little bop a lot, baby. Shake a lot of what you got, loving on is mine. Mercy, 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 tell me what you got so fine. Mercy, 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 tell me what you got so fine. You got the dogs all shaking, jumping in such a good time. You got them all rocking, they just keep on knocking, 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 knocking at his door. They call him on the phone and won't leave him alone, and he's coming back for more. Oh, mercy, 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 won't you teach me what you know? Mercy, 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 won't you teach me what you know? I want it down on my heart so I can really go. Mercy, 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 won't you teach me what you know? Mercy, 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 won't you teach me what you know? Come on down on my arm so I can really go.
There's a lot of ways of saying Hank's music is still loved by so many, but I guess one of the best ways is just to say Hank Williams is still alive and well. In my mind, Hank is still alive and well. As my memory travels down that lonesome trail, I can hear him singing songs of yesterday and see the millions cheering through the veil. I watch him come in on the stage once more, just like I did so many times before. It's so hard to leave my dream, but I can tell Hank Williams is still alive and well. His memory lingers with me through the years. His smile and song, they hide so many tears. We'll never know the true heart of the man, loved by so many throughout the land. I watch him come in on the stage once more, just like I did so many times before. It's so hard to leave my dream, but I can tell Hank Williams is still alive and well. Oh, Hank is still alive and well. Many years later, after being a drifting cowboy had become a dim memory, I was involved in a head-on crash that almost took my life, except for the mercy of a forgiving God that let me live, turned my life around, and returned to a musical career which included recording my first gospel album and the following true story, which has nothing to do with the Hank Williams story, except that now that I have your attention, maybe you would be interested to know how God turned around the life of another old drifting cowboy.
My old daddy was always thought real well of back when I was a boy, just growing up. Folks would say, "There goes the Pennington boy." I know his daddy, fine man. Yeah, Dad would do a neighbor a good turn or help somebody in need. Wouldn't think anything about asking anything for doing it. I guess he just figured that was the way folks were supposed to live. And as I began to get a little bigger, seemed like Dad was looking a little older. And though he was a good man and all that, he never did take me and Mom to church much, excepting maybe to a funeral now and then. Well, it seemed like something was missing in his life back then, and later on, I found out what it was. He was growing old without God. Growing old without God. He was wasting his lifetime. Growing old without God. And then there was Mama. God bless her. She was the one that showed me how to play my first chords on the guitar. And though she wasn't a godly woman, some of those old gospel songs she sang sure were pretty. And I learned a few of them too. Then one summer a little tent meeting came to our town, and we were visiting nearby, and I could hear the sound of those old songs coming across the field, and I was just itching to go out there and sing with those folks. I asked Mom, and she said it was all right, but you know, I just wanted to go out and show them how I could sing. But God had other plans that night. Yes, He laid it on my heart to repent and believe. Well, I went back for more the next night and the next, and right on up until that little meeting closed. And then I started going to a church nearby with some of the folks from the meeting. And I'd ask Mom and Dad to go with me. Well, Mom was sick a lot in those days, and Dad, he'd just say, "Oh, I don't need to go to church. I can be just as good right here at home." Well, I finally quit asking. But in my heart, I knew they were both just growing old without God. Growing old without God. They were wasting their lifetime. Growing old without God. Well, being good was all right for a time, but it seemed like the harder I tried to serve the Lord, the more the devil would tempt me with just about everything out there in the world. And I have to confess I was weak, and I began to drift away. Then after a while I left home to work and wander around the country, coming back every year or so to visit the folks. Oh, I was really living it up in those days, taking about everything life had to offer out there in the world. But on my last visit home, I could see that the years were taking their toll on Mom and Dad. She'd grown a lot more sickly, and now ill health was starting to overtake Dad too. But you know, a strange and wonderful thing had happened. I found out my daddy had started going to that same old church that I'd went to as a boy years before. And when Mom felt well enough, he'd take her along too. Well, Dad never lived very long after I came back home to stay. But before he went on out into eternity, he called me to his side one day. And he said, "Son, don't grow old without God. Don't grow old without God. Don't keep wasting your lifetime growing old without God." It seems so ironic that he'd be saying the same things to me that I used to think about him. Well, a few years later, Mom left this veil of suffering, and went on to be with Dad. Oh, I've wondered so many times since then why these good folks who were thought so well of all their lives had to grow old before finding God and hadn't really come to know Jesus until their declining years. Oh, they could have done so much for the Master during their younger, energetic lives. But listen to me. One day, I looked into a mirror, and the young man that used to look back at me wasn't there anymore. In his place was a man whose face bore lines of age and hair tinged with gray. And my memory then vividly brought back the haunting words of my daddy before he passed on into the world beyond. And I cried out, "Oh God, have I let this happen to me too? Where did all those years go? Can I have them back now, Jesus, and relive my life for you?" Too late, for even God won't turn back the hands of time. And then it really hit me, and I realized that I too was growing old without God. Growing old without God. I'd been wasting my lifetime growing old without God. Well, is that the end of my story, you ask? No, not quite. Because you see, God has seen fit to be merciful to me. And He's come back in and He's cleaned up this old sin-stained life of mine. He's brought me back to the place where I should have been all those wasted years. Now I know I'll never outlive the regret I bear. But my strongest hope is that through the redeeming blood of Jesus, I can continue to help lead other lost souls to Him. Help them to understand the importance of serving Him before you grow old. While you're still young, while your light can shine its brightest, give your life to Him because He gave His life for you. Don't grow old without God. Don't grow old without God. Don't keep wasting your lifetime growing old without God. Now this story you've just heard is true. I know because I'm that man.
He can fix it when no one else can. He shares my sorrow and He bears my pain. He makes the sunshine even when it rains. Jesus, 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 the Almighty fix-it man. Whenever you get lonely, He'll be your best friend. He can soothe your troubled mind and your broken heart mend. And if hard times take your job away, He'll find more work for you. Yes, Jesus, 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 He's the one who'll see you through. 'Cause Jesus is the Almighty fix-it man. He can fix it when no one else can. He shares my sorrow and He bears my pain. He makes the sunshine even when it rains. Jesus, 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 the Almighty fix-it man. No matter how big your mountain, He will help you climb. Or if you face a dark valley, He'll bring you peace of mind. And if you're hungry, the Lord is so good, or you'll find that He has plenty of food. Jesus, 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 the Almighty fix-it man. No matter how heavy your burden, He knows just how to lift it. And He can bind the powers of Satan if you're the slave to a habit. And if your soul is lost in sin, why, He'll forgive you, just let Him come on in. Jesus, 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 the Almighty fix-it man. Yeah, Jesus is the Almighty when no one else can. He shares my sorrow and he bears my pain. He makes the sun shine even when it rains. Jesus, 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 the almighty fix-it man. Now who'd I say?